Hello everyone, and thank you so much for tuning in to Dr. Judy WTF. And hopefully we've got good lighting and good sound and no echoes, and all of the tech support is working. And that to me is a really good start. And of course, if something is not working for you, then please comment, and we always try to fix it, and appropriately so. This is about therapeutic imperfections, to include technical support imperfections, which sometimes interferes with our ability to communicate with you. So first of all, I want to introduce myself. I'm Dr. Judy Rosenberg. I am the founder of the mind map system, the creator of the mind map system, the Be the Cause mind map system for healing human disconnect, and the director of the Psychological Healing Center. We are always growing, including very wonderful team members on our team, and hopefully accommodating for people who have various budgets. And please do not hesitate to call me for a free consultation or full consultation, and ask all the questions that you need to get information, so that if you feel that you are suffering from childhood wounds, narcissistic abuse, any sort of life event or past life event that is arresting your development, stopping you from becoming the best of your best, then come see us. And we are on Zoom. We are live. If you live in the Sherman Oaks area or any area close to Sherman Oaks, well, by all means, come to the office. So we are going to be talking tonight about therapeutic imperfections, because a therapeutic relationship is, just like any relationship, an imperfect one. And I'm certainly guilty of many, many imperfections. And sometimes those imperfections are so embarrassing and so difficult. And I think my least favorite things that happened to me as a psychologist are things like double booking a patient. Oh my goodness, I've done it. And I'm sure if you're a therapist, psychologist, mental health professional, I'm sure you have done it also. And you just have to deal with it. And you have to make the best possible choices for the patients involved. And of course, you've got to reshuffle the deck in these cases. Another therapeutic imperfection of mine is being late. Well, sometimes I'm late. I don't show up exactly when the clock strikes the hour. And again, that's not a good feeling for anyone, because when people are paying good money for their therapeutic session, they expect you to be on time. But guess what? Therapists are not perfect. And so this is a segue into mothers, parents are not perfect. Now, sometimes these imperfections are way, way out of line. As many of you know, I speak a lot about childhood abuses and neglects. There are imperfections, and then there are abuses and neglects, and then there are therapeutic imperfections that sometimes therapists do not own up to, and then they don't make up for. I think one of the signs of a good therapist is if they're willing to make up for their flaws. They're willing to make up for them in ways of time, ways of accommodating the person receiving services, and all kinds of ways that create a therapeutic continued connection. Now, one of the terms that I want to introduce to you, if you haven't heard it already, is the term called transference. So what is transference? It's a psychoanalytic term, and it simply means that patient comes in and they bring with them their psychological misperceptions and misconceptions and cracked lens of perception, as I like to call it, their view of themselves in the world. And what they do is they transfer that, or they project that onto the therapist. So for example, if they have been called stupid in their family of origin, if they've been ignored and neglected, then can you imagine if a therapist is late, that may rip open old childhood wounds of being abandoned, made to feel unimportant, and so on and so forth. So the way therapists usually like to see this, and this includes the topic of the day, is that it is an opportunity. It's sort of a curse by design. You know, we don't set up these imperfections. It's not like we plan them, but they happen. And when they happen, they activate things like core negative beliefs within the person, like the one I brought up earlier. If a therapist is late, if your therapist is late, it may bring up feelings of anger, feelings of not knowing if you matter to the other person, and all of the old garbage from the past revisits the therapeutic relationship. And if the therapist cannot catch that and process it with the patient, or if the patient is in a state of too much pain, or they're just too delicate, then sometimes they will leave therapy. And you know, it's unfortunate, because I think most people in the mental health profession genuinely want to keep the therapeutic bond and heal through these rips and repair them, so that the therapeutic relationship can continue for at least as long as is required to travel from the journey. And speaking of the journey of the mind map is a journey from old childhood wounds and encodings of the past, and dismantling them, and then paradigm shifting them, you out of all of the pain and suffering, and into a new way of being. Thank you so much. So you can see up there is the wound, and the wound are metaphorically represented. The wounds are metaphorically represented by all of those black dots and shadows all over your potential light, which is your unmanifested self. So if you're wounded, if you're abused and neglected, then you don't have all of the elements that you need to foster your best of your best and help you develop properly. You can see in panel 2, these reactions to the wound are metaphorically represented as this sort of a cracking up, the cracked lens of perception. And so within the therapy, these reactions of anger and frustration and betrayal and sadness and all kinds of feelings are going to be activated within the confines of the therapy. And then these activations then create a sort of a trigger point of the negative core beliefs that are laid down in the individual. And these negative core beliefs are core beliefs that have developed over time, and they are messages that have been ingrained into the fiber of an individual's being. Messages like, you're not lovable, you're not good enough, you don't matter. Messages like, you're a loser. Messages like, you will never be loved, you'll never be number one. And these kinds of feelings live in the therapeutic relationship as they need to, because there's no way to avoid them. And this work, the mind map work, is really about reaching in there and exposing these wounds of childhood, and then having a therapist to work them through. Now, this is a psychoanalytic model. For those who are familiar with psychoanalysis, psychoanalysis is about making the unconscious conscious, and that's what we are doing. But unlike psychoanalysis, which takes many, many years, we are honing in on a very structured journey that takes you from these wounds of childhood and psychoeducating you, so that we don't have to wait for all of this material to emerge over several months and years. We at the Psychological Healing Center just ask the right questions, so that we can go right in there and not waste your therapeutic time and money. And by the way, everybody, if you would like a free copy of the book that I wrote called Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, please get one. And you're welcome to get one. You can contact the Psychological Healing Center. You can download it. It is a PDF. If you want an actual copy of the book, you could order it off of Amazon.com, and it'll be delivered to you. And of course, there's the Mind Map video series, which is available to you. It is also a download. It's a Vimeo, I guess they call it that. And you purchase it and then you log in. And then I appear and I go through the entire mind map, a journey illustrating all of these wounds, reactions, and codings, chaos, defenses, breakdowns, and the paradigm shift and the recoding and healing, and then take you to a sense of inner peace and a sense of balance and unity. So that is the journey. And of course, it's an imperfect journey, and all of this material is going to come up right in the therapeutic process. So let's talk about a little bit about Dr. Alfred Winnicott, who was, I believe he was a pediatrician and psychoanalyst, and he came up with a concept called good enough mother. And a good enough mother is similar to a good enough therapist. Let's go with the good enough mother term. According to John Bowlby, Dr. John Bowlby, father of attachment theory, in order to be a good enough mother, you have to be pretty attuned to your child. You've got to be there for your child, preferably eye contact, skin contact, breastfeeding, all kinds of ways that you could show the child that they're important. And I get a lot of flack when I say the word breastfeeding, just because breastfeeding is a preferred way to feed your child and bond to your child. It doesn't mean, just to clarify, I have a lot of questions. If I did breastfeed my child, are you calling me a narcissist? Absolutely not. Just because you don't breastfeed your child, you're not a narcissist. It is true, though, that if you take inventory, and I have seen a lot of people, that mothers who are more narcissistic tend not to breastfeed their children because they tend to put their own needs before the needs of their children. And they tend more to not attach so strongly with their children because, again, they're busy filling their own hole in the soul. And although they may be physically present or maybe not even, they lack that mothering, they lack that empathy, they lack that nurturance to really give that child a sense of constancy and safety and environment of attunement and marrying, which is so important. So let's go back to that therapeutic relationship, and I can describe what happens and how people react. So let's say I'm genuinely running late and I have a lot of phone calls to return, and sometimes I have emergencies, and this is not an excuse, but it's true. And once in a while you just have to go to the bathroom too. It's just a reality of life. And so sometimes I just don't show up at that hour. And if somebody is in the middle, particularly in the middle of a very delicate phase of therapy, usually panels 1 through 6 are the delicate phases of therapy, and you don't show up for them, well, what do you think that's going to activate in the patient? A lot. So, for example, it can activate things like, wait a minute, you mean I don't matter to you? Your time is more important than my time. And so where does all of this come from? Some of it is the truth that it's not nice to be late, and it's not nice to not give every ounce of your time to that patient. That is just a given. However, with the idea that the therapist and I will make up for that time or do something to absolutely make the imperfections as whole as possible, the rest is grist for the mill to explore these therapeutic rips that occurred back in the first few months and years of life. And so you could see what happens within the therapeutic relationship, even if the therapist will look away or look at the clock or any one of these little kind of imperfections, as I'm calling them today, will trigger a patient who is in a delicate state and a delicate developmental state. And by the way, this is a call-in show, everybody. And so please feel free to call in. And we're drawing parallels between the good enough mother or the not good enough mother and the good enough therapist or the not good enough therapist. I did a show on how do you know if you're in the right kind of therapy. And certainly if your therapist is consistently late, if your therapist doesn't remember your name, if your therapist is looking at their cell phone or preoccupied, these are not good signs. And please do call your therapist out on these really bad imperfections, and give the person, of course, if they're chronic and they just keep recurring, then you have every right to find another therapist, right? You don't want to pay for that stuff. If it's repairable, it's best that things get repaired right in the therapeutic relationship, because this is going to happen in any relationship where the person that you're married to doesn't show up perfectly. The boss that you are trying to work with doesn't create an environment of safety. The friend that you thought was so nice and kind forgets your birthday or forgets to call you on a special occasion, or doesn't really have time for you when you're in a crisis. And these are the letdowns of life. And so Alfred Winnicott and his whole idea of the good enough mother, I think, is a really, really intelligent concept to learn, because what happens is over time, the baby gets the message that mother is hopefully good enough and consistent enough and will show up and will eventually create a healthy dependency, which leads to healthy independence, a healthy attachment, which then leads to exploratory behaviors, and then individuating from the family of origin and launching out into the world. So you see, this is a developmental model. First, you're tied to your mother, and then over time, you slowly get the confidence that she's there for you, and so that you're safe to go explore the world. In the first days of life, people have to develop what is called object constancy. And object constancy is the notion that mother is coming back. Now, this develops over time, because in the infant mind, out of sight is out of mind. And so if mommy disappears, they have no idea where mommy went. It's almost like a magical thing. But over time and consistency, mommy starts to be a more consistently objective. I won't say the word objectified because that's not the right way to describe it, but the mother is a more consistent object in the child's mind. So the notion that she's coming back, the notion that she's dependable, the notion that the child's feelings will be attended to, good enough. Now, why good enough and not perfect? Because number one, we're not perfect. And number two, this curse by design little gap in perfection allows for what is very necessary in life, which is to accommodate for life's perfections. And one of the wounds that is not talked about is the wound of smothering and spoiling. And when parents are too perfect and they don't even allow for any imperfections, it gives the baby and the child the impression that mommy or daddy, the primary or secondary caregiver, is going to be there on the spot, on the dot. And that just doesn't happen in the real world. So somewhere, somehow in there, we have to naturally train our children that the world is not perfect, and that sometimes failures will occur, and hopefully they're not gross failures like child neglect and leaving your kid in the crib to cry it out all night, or failures of keeping a child safe, or violations like sexual violations or physical violations. I mean, these are just beyond imperfections. These are in the category of abuses and neglects. So the imperfections are important. They're important because they give you, the child, the baby child, and every human being the opportunity to grow and accommodate for these imperfections, and to grow stronger and more resilient in the face of these imperfections. And this is a call-in show, everybody. So please do feel free to call in. And that number is, I believe, on the screen. And if it's not, then maybe put it up there on the screen. So I'd like to hear from you. I would like to hear from you about imperfections in your first few years or more of life, your imperfections that you've encountered in therapy. I'd like to hear how those imperfections got worked through or didn't get worked through. Thank you so much. And that number is 323-524-2599. And I would like to hear from you, because it's always more interesting when people call in and share their world. And it's an opportunity for other people to relate to what is happening, because we're definitely not alone in this world of imperfection, in a very, very imperfect world. So I want to go to one of the favorite people that I like to read up on is a therapist by the name of Eleanor Greenberg. I think she's really wise and smart, and she does a lot of writing on object constancy and whole object relations, and you can find her on Quora. And yeah, I really admire her work. And this is a question asked of her: what does a person do about whole object relations issues and object constancy, and how do they develop? So this is in the case where the person doesn't have good enough mothering, and they don't have all of the necessary, what I like to call narcissistic supplies to make them feel whole and good enough about themselves, and good enough about the world, and good enough about knowing that the world is a place that's consistent and safe. So what happens is, as you know, when this is missing, then people develop what I refer to as a hole in the soul. And this hole in the soul is often seen in people who have personality disorders. We call them the cluster B personality disorders, because now these personality disorders have a kind of a pattern to them. And so when you talk about the borderline personality structure, you see that underlying the borderline personality structure is a fear of abandonment, and the object relations of that particular person from the first few years of life was not very good, because that person wasn't emotionally regulated and attuned to. And oftentimes the mothers of borderline patients have also a lot of psychopathology within them that then transfers to the next generation. And that's why I call this kind of healing multi-generational, because what we're trying to do is heal you so that you don't pass this stuff to the next generation, and then the next generation doesn't have to grapple with their hole in the soul and compromise their sense of well-being and a rest in the development. So when you have a core of emptiness and a core of lack of consistency, then the object relations is not complete. It's not a whole object relations. And so that consistency that's so important to develop a sense of security is missing. So how do you do that therapeutically? Well, that's what I mean. You've got to show the person consistency. And if you're not perfect in your consistency, you've got to repair the inconsistencies in such a way where the person can at least depend that if you're not going to be perfect, you will own your own stuff. And I want to delve a little bit more into owning your own stuff, because that to me is a sign of mental health. When somebody could say, oops, I really messed up, and I owe it to you to clean it up with you, and what could I do to make it better? And you work out a plan to actually repair the situation. Many of you who have worked with me know that I'm not a big fan of I'm sorry. I mean, I step on somebody's foot, I'm sorry, I spill water on someone, not such a horrible thing, I'm sorry. But if I destroy somebody's shirt because I spill a liquid on it that creates a big stain, sorry is not enough. So you could see that imperfection needs to be addressed with more than I'm sorry. It has to be repaired. And I think, is that a question?
We have a
Hello?
call.
Okay, just finishing the thought. That kind of stuff has to be addressed and repaired. And thank you so much for calling in. And what is your name, please? Hello?
Oh, they hung up.
Well, call back.
That's right.
Call back. Okay. And rips and repairs. So that's what I mean by rips and repairs. Calls come in, calls get disconnected from.
Oh, we got him back.
Yeah, see, that's what
Hello.
I mean. Hi,
Hello.
how are you? Thank you so much for calling in.
Hi. Of course, yes. It was busy right now. I don't know. Anyways, I'm a fan of yours. I love listening to
Thank you.
the talks that you give.
Thank you.
And I'm getting nervous here. I went blank.
Yeah, no, don't worry. I'll listen. I'll help you out here, okay? So that I know that when
Yeah.
people call
So,
in, it's risky. And is there a
yeah.
name that you want me to call you? And if you don't want to say your actual name, just make one up.
No, we could call me Arizona.
Arizona. I
That's where I'm
presume
calling from.
you're from Arizona. Okay, thanks so much,
Yes,
Arizona. So
yes.
so what inspired the call today? And if you can speak to the topic that we're on.
Yeah, and the topic is regarding childhood. I'm sorry, what was the topic again? Because I was
Yeah, the topic is therapeutic imperfections, and also mother-daughter disconnections, which are like those imperfections of parenting, because no parent is going to be perfect, and some parents are going to be way out of the range of perfect, and therapists, because they're in the position of being transferred upon, and they're not perfect, they're going to be activating childhood wounds. So that is the topic.
Yes, and that's exactly. So there's definitely always been a drift and a disconnect between me and my mother.
Okay.
As a child, now I understand it, and obviously, I mean, she's not willing to go to any type of to a psychiatrist or to get any type of help, because in her eyes, she's okay.
Okay.
But growing up, there was definitely a lot of projecting. She, always told us that my father had overdosed, and to find out now as a grown adult, apparently, I guess it was something else. And so there's always been like a lot of lies. and
Mm-hmm.
a lot of her living her life. I mean, just pretty much, you know, it's a bunch of us with a bunch of different fathers, and her really not sticking it out with any relationship. But besides that, you know, I could oversee all that. It's the way she treats, you know, how she treated me as a child and continue it as an adult. So I've been no contact for a while.
I see.
But
How long?
The weird thing is, I actually just broke it recently, and you know, she happened to walk into the church that I go to, and I honestly had no, it's gonna sound cold-hearted, but I didn't have any desire to even talk to her because of the harsh, cruel things that she has done in the now towards me. It's like an unspoken rule with my siblings. Like, she doesn't want them to communicate with me, and if she does, it has to be through her. And she's very like, she likes to pit us against one another.
Okay, so let's just kind of look at what you're saying so we could connect the dots and make more sense of this. So it sounds like I have a video up there, you guys should check it out, called Sibling Rivalry, Parents Are the Cause, Parents as the Cause. And in the case of narcissistic parents, in my definition, narcissism means when a parent lacks empathy, is very disconnecting, obviously, okay, and puts her own agenda before the feelings and needs of her own children. And you know, you were referring to yourself
100%.
Okay, so this is what I mean. It's a 180-degree turnaround from a nurturing mother who puts the needs of the child first. So unfortunately, you didn't have that. So that's what I mean, truly, by human disconnect. You were disconnected from. So when you say, oh, it sounds cold-hearted, to me, it sounds reasonable, okay? That when she didn't put the love in there, you don't have love to give back. She just, unfortunately, didn't earn it, okay? Yeah, and then
you know the weird thing though, it's, I don't even know how to explain or eloquently put in words what I want to. I'm going to try my best. It's, I feel like if she has, it's this weird type of hold on my psyche though. I don't even know if that makes sense.
It does.
I've talked to my pastor about it, to be honest, and it sort of feels to me, it feels, the best way to describe it, it feels like an unclean spirit. I don't know if I'm talking maybe too spiritual here. It just doesn't feel, it doesn't feel right, Dr. Judy. And I'm a believer. That's just me. And that's how I have found my healing. And I'm like, you know, I don't know what it is, but all negativity, I just want it away. Like, I don't even want her to speak my name. It's like, I feel like, I don't know. It's just, I don't even know. I'm sure there's studies on it, but I don't know. She just has this anger that brews towards me. And, you know, like, you know, just a couple years ago, I was going through issues with my husband, and I hadn't really completely cut off contact with her. And she found out, and she's like, you know, the reason why you're having issues with him is because the way you treat me. And I'm like, how do I treat you?
Back to her again.
Yeah, she literally,
hear it.
yes, everything will turn around and be about her, like something, you know.
Okay, so let's take a moment to analyze this, okay? Because that's what the mind map is for, is to help you think like a shrink and understand. So when you talk about this force and this spiritual bad energy, so to speak, from a
Mhm.
psychological
Mhm.
perspective, I look at it as a
Mhm.
toxic tie. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's these
Mhm. Mhm.
toxic ties that really get us because they are what I call incompletions. You see, we always chase what we don't have. We always have on our mind the unfinished business. And this unfinished business has us running like a little hamster, on one of those hamster wheels, just around and around. And even if they're not physically in our
Mhm.
life, they're in our head because they become like
Yes.
I call it literally a psychovirus because it makes us psycho.
Mhm.
And so when
Mhm.
parents give their children good enough mothering, okay, then what happens is that
Mhm.
this toxic tie is not toxic. It's a nourishing tie, and it gives the child a sense
Yeah.
of peace and completion. So you don't have that. And so part of the mind map work is to finish those psychological open, toxic files and process I
Mhm.
call it the psychological poison because that's what it feels like. And then just
Yeah.
let it rest in peace because it doesn't rest in peace when there's an open file. And then obviously you want to
Mhm.
work with a skilled therapist who knows about narcissistic abuse because narcissistic
Mhm.
abuse is its own special little category. Understood?
Yeah. 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 For sure.
So
Yeah.
don't blame yourself for not wanting to talk to her. She's didn't earn it.
Yeah.
What's that clicking
It,
sound? Is that you?
where does like? No, I'm sorry. I don't know what that is. I
Okay.
don't know. I have my AirPods on, so.
Yeah, maybe
But
that.
yeah, I've already, many years have mourned the relationship that should have, could have been, you know,
Okay.
but it's just, I've already, resigned to the fact that, I mean, it's not going to happen. It's, there's just no,
Probably.
even at her age, there's no self-reflection. There's no,
Mm-hmm.
I'm so, all I would need is for her to look in my eyes and say, I'm sorry. I should have never, did this to you last year, or,
That is
it's not even about, yeah.
no. I don't mean to
Go
interrupt.
ahead.
I just want to make sure that you grasp the point that people will go back to their herder, and that's another video. I want you to watch that one. The herder can't be the healer because, as you were saying, what would make the imperfection or the human disconnect go away is her simply saying, I thought about it. That was horrible of me to do that to you and treat you like that. And I want to make it good and I
Mm-hmm.
want to make up for it. It's just that you can't draw blood out of a stone, correct? And so when a
Yeah.
mother
Yeah.
truly lacks empathy, you're kind of hitting your head against the wall, and the same thing happens over again. There's no empathy, there's no mirroring, there's no attunement. And so through therapy, you get to complete the anger and the betrayal and the sadness of, here's another good one for you, grieving the mother that you didn't have. And by didn't have, I mean, she wasn't a good enough mother. Okay. So just be aware
No.
that in therapy, all of these
Mm-hmm.
transferential feelings are going to come up, and a good enough therapist will be able to create a therapeutic environment where you can bring all of these toxic feelings and work them through and have the enlightened witness therapist stand by your side as you carefully go through all of the misinterpretations that you then bought into, which are the negative core beliefs. So if you haven't
Mm-hmm.
already, you are more than welcome, of course, to call the Psychological Healing Center and to work this
Mm-hmm.
bit of it through. And it does feel like that toxic spirituality because psychology and spirituality, we're talking maybe different vocabulary, but it's still the same. You know, people process their poisons, and sometimes I call it an emotional exorcism, because you've got to literally exorcise all of those horrible feelings. And so, however it is, the words that you choose, it's the same thing. It's toxic. It's redundant. It spins around in your head. It's what I call the what the Freud, because it's unresolved, and you deserve to resolve. Okay, so any other last minute thoughts or questions? And then I'll just explain a little bit more about toxic ties.
Yeah, no, just that. I was thinking about that today. I was like, gosh, I don't know what, or if there's any books maybe I could read on. It's like, that's exactly how I feel. Like, if she has a hold on my psyche somehow, that sounds so weird, but because like I can go months without even, you know, and it's like I intentionally don't want to run into her. And I know with the holidays and you know, it being at her house, I don't go because I don't even want to be around her. And it's I mean, it's sad, because for healthy families or people to hear me say this, or like, who are you, like, where are you from? But there are some mothers who don't love their kids. They can say they do, but do their actions show it, you know?
Correct. So I don't know, have you read my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect? Have you read that?
You know what? I haven't. I have
just
not
grab it.
But I know I've watched a lot of your videos because I subscribed to you, and then I got the notice that you were on live, so I'm like, oh, I'm gonna plug in.
Yeah. So look, read my book, get online, and you will find books and books about toxic mothers and their effects on their daughters. I did a video with my therapist in London, England, Christiana Davidson. She does a lot of work with daughter-mother toxicity. And indeed, it does feel like some sort of spirit has possessed you. And I assure you, there is a psychological explanation, which I'll delve deeper. So please do understand that she hasn't earned the love. You don't owe her the love. If she's not nourishing to you, then you do what you need to do to keep yourself safe. Okay. So I appreciate you calling. Yes, safe and distant.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you. I appreciate what you're doing for the community and for healing. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you for that. Good night. Yeah, toxic tie. What is a toxic tie? It's what the Freud. You get toxically tied to somebody, and they give you a little bit of narcissistic supply. It's like Vegas. You know, you go to Vegas, you put your money in the slot machine, and you're so happy. Some money coughs back up at you, and then you put a whole bunch more in there, and you're down, and then you think, oh, I'll make that money back, and you put some more in, and then it vampires you. And that's what a toxic relationship does, is that it takes more than it gives. The other person on the other end, whether it be a mother, a husband, a boss, a friend, has a hole in the soul. Why? Because they too, multi-generationally, did not get their needs met. Their mothers, their fathers were not good enough, and they didn't get that nice sense of object constancy, and they didn't form good object relations, so that when things go down, there's no sense that they have somebody to repair it with, because that person on the other end is oftentimes so damaged that they are not people that are people that you can repair with, unless you've got a very skilled person doing a lot of internal repairs. And that's why it's so important to do the internal work before you get into a relationship and before you become a parent. And choose wisely who you pick into your life, because the people that you pick into your life are the people that are going to either elevate you, or they're going to drag you down. Either they're going to be nourishing, and you hopefully will be nourishing back to them, with them, and create what I call synergy, my panel number 7, where 1 plus 1 is greater than 2. So that's the light in the center, where you put your healthy individualism with their healthy individualism, and because of the good intentions, and because of the ability to share and care and have empathy, you create more light. Toxic ties don't work that way. Instead of that little light in the center, there's no light in the center. It's the vampire effect. Okay, so therapeutic imperfections replicate mother, daughter, father, son, mother, son, family disconnect. And in the skilled hands of a therapist, these rips and turn into opportunities or cursed by designs to actually reenact the injury and then build or have an opportunity for repair. Because that's life. We're not perfect, whether we're therapists or husbands or wives or mothers or daughters or whoever we are, we're not perfect. However, there's imperfect and then there's outright damaging. So we want to be people that we could be safe to repair with. And how do we be people who are safe to repair with? Is that we actually invite repair. Oh, did I hurt your feelings? Oh my goodness, I spilled some Coca-Cola all over your shirt and now it's stained. What could I do? How much was that shirt? I'll buy you a new one. Or, oh my goodness, I missed your appointment. Well, let me make up for that. Okay, and then you discuss what that make up for that is all about. I hope that I'm still online. Yes, Tony?
Yes, you are.
Okay, I just saw something flash on the screen. Didn't know what it was.
It was just,
Thank
I was
you.
putting a question from a listener.
Oh, okay. If you could read it, because
Sure.
I kind of, yeah, go ahead.
It's a question from it. It says, is your concept of negative narrative basically unconscious fantasy?
Unconscious fantasy, a negative narrative. Okay, I'll just liken that to negative core belief. It's sort of like what you've been programmed with. If you have a negative narrative, then you have to make the distinction between who you are and who your parents defined you to be. Because don't forget, we look at ourselves through our parents' eyes. And if they're giving us a negative narrative that you're stupid and ugly and unlovable and shouldn't have been born, then of course you're going to take that narrative because they're the boss, they're the parents, they're the God. And so you buy into that. And through the mind map system, you learn. There's a really important line in my book, and it goes like this: you learn to identify it rather than with it. So you're not having to be stuck in this narrative, this negative narrative. You are not the cause and creator of the negative narrative. Hopefully the negative narrative is something that you will identify as, I'll go back to my term, psychovirus, that horrible message that landed in your mind and is reverberating as we speak. Probably we've got to dismantle that poisonous message. We've got to rewrite and straighten out the story and look to the truth. And that truth is going to do a lot of unraveling of lies and misperceptions and misconceptions, which will therefore then change your narrative. And I hope that makes sense to whoever wrote in that question. Were there any other questions or comments in the chat room?
Let's see. Most people just chatting back and forth, and then the same person that asked that question, negative core belief and unconscious wish fantasy. So it sounded like they agreed. Yeah.
Yeah, I hope I answered your question. Thank you for the question. And so how do we form this object constancy in the therapeutic relationship? Well, a good enough therapist will overall be consistent. A good enough therapist will want to repair. A good enough therapist will want to own her own imperfections and make up for any rips in the therapeutic relationship. A good enough therapist is coming from the consciousness of wanting to make your life more healed and more fulfilling. A good enough therapist will work as a team with you so that you can feel comfortable in, as I was saying earlier, processing these toxic bonds and negative emotions and stand as witness to the fact that we're not crazy. We've been made crazy. And anybody who lives in a sick environment and was brought up by parents who are abusive and neglectful, well, why should we be too surprised that we don't feel well? And why should we be too surprised that our bodies take a hit and somatically we've got headaches and backaches and stomach aches and all kinds of aches, and emotionally, why wouldn't we be feeling depressed and anxious and fearful and alone? And from a defensive point of view, why wouldn't we want to take away the pain through defensive measures like drinking or smoking or being a shopaholic or whatever means people use to try to numb their pain? And this is the storyboard of the mind map, and the storyboard is there to help you identify what's been encoded in you and to decode all of that horrible negative narrative, if you will, and recode into truth and health. And so again, if you don't have a copy of my book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, please know that it's free, and you can also post the website and the free PDF on your social media, which I would really appreciate, because I think that people need this kind of education. They need to be proactive and understand and think like a shrink. And that is why the mind map is so structured and why it's so specific, is because unlike traditional therapy, where there's usually no real structure, no beginning, middle, and end, this has a beginning and a middle and an end. And so you always know where you are and where you're going, which already is therapeutic, because it's containing. It's the opposite of insecurity. When you're insecure and anxious, you don't know what's up. But when you have a system that's secure and guiding, then you know what's up. And that is already a first step in a therapeutic framework that's healing. So once again, please feel free to call in. We have a beautiful team of experts on staff who work with the mind map. I personally trained them into the mind map system. And you're more than welcome to learn more about it. And of course, you can get that mind map video series. It's about, about an 8 and some hour video watch. It includes obviously the PDF. You download the journal, and then you could start mind mapping yourself. And of course, better with a therapist by your side to lead you through the process. So I thank everyone so much for calling in. I'm going to be out for the next couple weeks, finally taking a little vacation, and we'll have some cool reruns to rerun. And I'll have people on my team answering the phone and answering your questions. So again, thank you so much for your being a fan and of subscribing to the channel and for spreading the word. And remember, go ahead and pay it forward. The mind map system book, Be the Cause, Healing Human Disconnect, is free. And so feel free to give it out to your friends, your family, and your community. And again, thank you very much, everybody. I'll see you next time. Good night.
And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my channel. If you need help, please call the number below. And if you've enjoyed